We'll go through, we have several topics tonight. We're going to rotate through our presenters. And the first one up will be Bree.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm not going to cause too much feedback. So the Army Corps of Engineers has been around a long time. There's multiple different mission areas that we work in. The St. Paul District has navigation, flood risk management, recreation, environmental stewardship, so we hit a majority of those. This is the first mission from Congress in 1824 to improve rivers in several ports across the country. On the Ohio and Mississippi River, currently the Corps manages 12,000 miles of inland and intercoastal commercial waterways, 13,000 miles of coastal waterways, over 400 ports and harbors and turning basins. Barges allow the regional and national economies to be sustainable. Commodities like grain, coal, and fertilizer support both the region and the nation. St. Paul District in 2023 had over $1 billion in commodities exported and imported. So, the Corps routinely surveys the Federal Navigation Channel to determine if shoals have accumulated, causing restrictions. Removal of this material or dredging is accomplished through specialized equipment like hydraulic or mechanical dredging. Hydraulic is pumping sand and water in a mixture by pipeline to a designated placement site. Mechanical dredging excavates material with a backhoe or a crane, loaded onto barges and transferred to a placement site. Routine maintenance continues in pools 5A and 6. Specific dredge material management plans include Pool 4 for the Section 217 agreement is ongoing with the City of Wabasha. Currently unloading material from the Wabasha gravel pit. Management of island placement sites is pending approval and construction of the riverfront infrastructure. The Corps is continuing to acquire ancillary land in Lower Pool 4. In Pool 5, the Corps is implementing the rolling prairie land use management plan described in the dredge material management plan. That includes the placement of material planned for either this summer or next summer, prairie restoration, and restoration of Gorman Creek. In Pool 6, and currently working to bring on a beneficial use site at the Badger equipment site. The public assessment for that just finished up on April 27th, and the team is currently evaluating comments. I'm gonna pause and hand it over to Sam Mathewitz here for lock and dam updates.
All right, folks, well, while we work on this technical challenge, we're going to keep moving along. So what I was going to share with you tonight, unfortunately I don't have the slides, but some of the 24 NAV statistics for locks and dams. You know, our average navigation season is 253 days long. Last year we were approximately 260 days. During that time frame, we moved about 78 million tons of commodity throughout the district. Something to keep in mind, the importance of that is that service to the area, that's products moving up and down the river. And a lot of those products, they do pass through multiple sites. That's grain, cement, petroleum products, etc. So that's things that we use in our everyday lives, and that's the importance of that to this crowd. You know, it's also recreational traffic. One of the key things there, we locked about 14,000 wet craft through the area here, and that's not only, that's economic impact to this area, and that's not just pools 4 through 7, that is the entire district. So that spans from Lock 10 down in Guttenberg, Iowa, all the way up to Minneapolis, Minnesota. The other thing here I wanted to touch on was locking through. I'm not sure on everybody's familiarity with locking through. However, there's things to keep in mind. Contact the locks on channel 14. It's the best way. My lock operators, they always have a marine band radio on them and they will answer it. That's how we communicate with the commercial vessels. Channel 16 for everyone's knowledge, is the SOS channel. If you answer it, somebody will pick up. If you call a distress call, also the Coast Guard will pick up on that one. But you would contact them on that. It's the best way. You follow the instructions from the lock staff. Please be patient as we assist our other customers. Go slow. A reminder, the lock area.
You said channel 14. Right?
Channel 14, yes.
That's where we has a
Marine band.
Marine band radio. What do you just have a cell phone?
What was that, sir?
What do you just have a cell phone?
We would prefer Marine band because we can't always answer the phones. They do get busy on some weekends.
Okay.
Yep. So, well, you can call the lock sites, but I mean, there's no guarantee that someone's going to pick it up. Okay? Yep. There's also a pull cord on each end. There'll be a large sign. It's about 4 feet by 5 feet long, blue and white. You know, keep in mind, moving on, that there are no wait zones. That's for your own safety and the safety of the equipment and other passengers there. And then always use caution on locks and dams. They are a dangerous place. You have currents, other people moving around. And above all else, have fun. Be safe out there. Did you get a working interview? Oh, you can go on down to number, once you get them up. So there is a variety of signals we'll use, whether it's traffic lights, horn signals. Dean, if you want to pass up, if you got the working interview. Thank you. All right. There we go. Sorry about that. Moving on, another thing for the locks that I want to share with everyone. So we have some new restricted signage that we're piloting at Lock and Dam 7, and it's actually, I didn't make it on this one, but on the dams it's a red and white sign. Same color pattern as this one. It'll be on the dams. It'll say restricted area, keep back, and it'll say 600 feet on the upstream side, 150 feet on the downstream side. It's way more visible versus the buoy system. We're still going to maintain the buoys in the interim as we pilot through this system. The other sign you'll see up there, white background, orange square with an orange diamond and an orange cross, that denotes the restricted areas. It's just dams are dangerous. You have currents, semi-submerged logs, etc. I wanted to share that with everybody for safety. Alright, and then just a quick review of the 25 and 24-25 work. So some of the work in these pools in this area that we did, we completed the installation of lower guide wall and cell at Lock 4. That's the top picture on the top left. We installed new miter gate anchorages at Lock and Dam 7. That's the top right. That's a picture of the anchorages before we install. And that's in preparation for the new miter gates that we're planning to install here in the end of July. 5 and 5A. Steel repairs, repainting. Lock 5, there's ongoing partnership with the Minnesota DNR, USGS, Fish and Wildlife Service in a joint effort for an invasive species barrier. There was a lot of legislation passed that is led by the Minnesota DNR. That's a concept drawing on the bottom there. And then the last thing I noted there is we are going to look at installing gates in Lock 6 and 7 here in the end of summer. And then this is the tentative schedule for work. So these will be closures and then will be published navigation notices for some of these. But you can see as we look ahead into the future of the 28th. All right, next I will be followed by John Henderson.
Good evening, folks. Like I said, I'm John Henderson. I'm the project manager for the St. Paul District, and I'm based out of the Winona office. I'm just going to be walking us through some of the active and upcoming construction projects. Some of these are being done by our folks, some of them are being done by contractors. I just figured it'd be great to share with you guys. So, looking from upstream to downstream, we've got, as I'm sure many of you are aware, the upper Pool 4 islands. We have those currently in construction. Pool 4 Pipeline A here in Wabasha is right upstream, and that's wrapping up. And then Lock Dam 5A and 5 gate maintenance contracts, as Sam said, those are in progress as well. And then we're going to be seeing some gates put in here a little bit later in the year. Starting on the north end, our upper Pool 4 project, that's part of that's under the Section 1122 beneficial use of dredged material. I'm sure you guys have seen some of the barges getting loaded, hauled up from Reeds all the way up to Red Wing and Bay City area. That's going for, let's see, you guys can't see. Same part here. Oh, there it is. Sweet. So, what we're seeing here, that's these 3 islands right here. You've got Catherine Pass going here, up through, and then towards Bay City, that's right up here. We have one mud flat, one island here. The granular berm on that is complete, as you can see here. This is as of April. All the granular bases and most of the riprap for these islands is complete. We shouldn't see Catherine Pass dredged yet this year, and that's all being done by LS Marine out of St. Paul. And then we've got Island 4 here, which is a separate contract being completed by New Marine. That will be getting started here actually this week. They're hoping to start moving sand off reeds and then hauling it upstream. For this island, this is being completed under the Navigation Ecosystem Sustainability Program. And then both of these groups of islands will be getting topsoil, which will be coming from these overwintering areas for fisheries. So we should see those really picking up here in the next couple weeks, and then by into 2026, into 2027, we should be wrapping up. So you'll have access through Catherine's Cut that will be permanently open, dredged to 6 or 7 feet. So that should help with access into Bay City, and then you should be able to fish and traverse these islands for whatever you desire in a couple years. And that is in partnership with the Wisconsin DNR for this. And then, like I said, Pool 4 Pipeline A, we're going to be wrapping that up here this year. We've got some Jersey barriers yet to get delivered, I think, but for the most part, we are close to getting that one done and putting that into use. And then, like Sam said, we're doing some work on the minor gates at 5 and 5A. Most of that's hidden, tucked behind the locks and dams on the downstream side. They've got the bulkheads put in on the gate they're working on at 5. I don't think they've started quite at 5A yet. But yeah, they're climbing inside the gates here, also resurfacing a lot of these and replacing some of the rivets. Pretty large contracts, 24 million and 23 million at Lock and Dam, 5 and 5A respectively, and that's being completed by ASI contractors, and that's going to be going on for the next few years. They're looking to get one gate done per year. It's not a quick process, lots of sandblasting, lots of painting across the board. And like Sam said, minor gates should be arriving at 6 or 7 yet this year. Going to be pretty similar if you guys have seen it at any of the other locks. We're going to bring 300-ton crane up from Rock Island District. A couple-day process to put those in. I think it's a gate or 2 per day, if I remember right. And, should go pretty quick. Those are being fabricated down south by G&G Steel and then hauled upstream from New Marine down in Dubuque.
As we leave later this summer, 6 and 7.
Do you have dates on that yet, Sam?
It is, yep. Once we get confirmation, we'll get the nav notices off. We're looking at the end of July and second half of August.
And for those that may not have been able to hear Sam, he's looking end of July, maybe into August. They'll get the official nav notice out once that is here in Pool 4, Upper Pool 4. We've got Wakuta Bay right across the river from Upper Pool 4 and Island 4. This was actually part of the original feasibility study for that group of islands. It got pulled into the Navigation Ecosystem Sustainability Program as well. And that is, I'll touch on it here a little bit more, and then, as I'm sure you guys are very familiar with the Big Lake and Robinson Lake acres right here, out our back door, and then 5 and 5A incels will be installed on the locks there, and then we've got a Johnson Island Nest project coming up, Pool 6, and then Lock and Dam 7 is going to be real busy yet this year, and into next year. So like I said, Wakuta Bay, it's a pretty good sized project. We've been working through this the last couple of years. $15 to $20 million. We don't have an exact timeline on when this is going to be solicited for contract. That's pending funding. But like I said, this is the Navigation Ecosystem Sustainability Program. We're currently wrapping up the design, so really we're just waiting for the appropriate funding to put that out for solicitation. Big Lake A-Trip, we got through the feasibility process on that. We're moving into the design. Right now, I think the goal is going to be to really target a lot of the rock structures on the upstream side through the first stage of that project, and then try to tackle some of the downstream islands. And that's through our Upper Mississippi River Restoration Program, and that too is also pending funding. So we're probably a little bit further out on the Big Lake project than we are with Cuda, because we have a few projects downstream in Pool 10 we need to get through. But yeah, that's a pretty good sized project, and we'll see a lot of benefits across the river here. And then Robinson Lake, we actually just had the public meeting here about a month ago for this project. Pretty good sized project. We're going to see some of the sand offloaded there from TPO to Point to help build some of those islands, and then some backwater dredging in various areas there. You can see in the blue the greener islands, and then a little bit of head protection on that island on the north side on Hershey Island. So again, Upper Mississippi River Restoration Program, we're waiting on funding to be able to take that to the next step once we're through the planning process. Then Pool 6, we've got Johnson Island Ecosystem Restoration Project. We're also moving through the planning process on this. We'll have an official public meeting here mid to late June is the goal for that, to really describe this project a little bit more at length. Again, it's in that $10 to $15 million range. The Navigation Ecosystem Sustainability Program limits the project sizes to $25 million, so we're a little bit limited on the amount of work we're able to do on some of these projects. But we're still able to get a decent chunk of work done and enhancing some islands here on the perimeter of this, stabilizing a lot of the shoreline bank, and then also doing a bit of habitat dredging in the backwaters. And that also is pending funding. And then Lock and Dam 7, like I said, is going to get pretty busy here in the next couple of years. Work with the navigation industry, we're looking to do pretty substantial outdraft modification here, a dogleg weir. As you can see, it'll bank up a little bit at an angle and then fall along the shoreline there to help increase the safety here for the barge traffic moving up and down through Lock and Dam 7. And that should be getting solicited yet this year. Go ahead, Jimmy.
My name's Dan Berger, and I'm from Lock Technical Lock 7. If any of you are here to learn more about this particular project, I brought along some information. My name's Dan Berger, I'm the lockmaster from Lock 7. In case any of you are here to learn more about the outdraft mitigation that's going to be happening there, I brought along some one-page informational flyers, so you can just see me after the show here, and I can give you that and talk a little more.
Then also upstream of Lock 7, we've got the Pool 7 mooring cell, also part of the NEST program. That should be hitting the street also this year. And then an end cell going on 5A, and 7. Just for reference, here's Lock and Dam 6. It's essentially a big sheet pile wall filled with concrete. So nothing too extravagant, but should help bolster up those lock and dams pretty well.
We've developed those maps of the plan in conjunction with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So this is an example of one of the maps. You can see how things are color-coded. Over in the legend, you can see, you won't be able to see it, but it'll tell you what the different colors mean. So it's pretty clear so that you can tell who's the managing agency, whether it's us, Fish and Wildlife, whether it's a state agency. So that is a very helpful tool to at least you know who to contact for different parts. Okay, for our recreation, most of our recreation is in the southern part of our district. Our biggest one is Blackhawk Park down in Pool 9. That we have a campground that has about 170 campsites. 70 are electric, the other are non-electric. We have a couple boat launches, one that goes in the backwaters, one that goes into the main channel, and we have picnic shelters, daily stuff. We also manage 3 different boat launches. In Pool 9, there's Millstone and Bad Axe, and in Pool 10, there's Jays Lake. We have quite a few recreation out grants. There's a lot of smaller ones, but the bigger ones that we have, again, are going to be a little bit south of here. Goose Island, just south of La Crosse, is managed by La Crosse County. So we own the land, but they manage it. Same with Wildcat Park in Houston County, Minnesota. And then we have River Lakes way down in Pool 10. So environmental stewardship, the main idea is to manage and conserve our natural resources. So we do that through the conservation, preservation, and protection of USA's lands and water resources. And we have 2 kind of main components to that. One is shoreline and boundary management, and the other one is wildlife habitat management. So the shoreline management program that I'm in charge of, we have approximately 525 water-based items. The majority of them are going to be docks. There are also land-based items that is handled through the real estate office. And the zone of shoreline management starts in Pool 3 in Sturgeon Lake and then goes all the way down to Pool 10 in Dunford. We have different areas that are zoned as either grandfathered or limited development. The grandfathered areas mean that if a structure wasn't there in 1988 or previous, it can't be there now. So people can still maintain what was there at that time, but no new structures. The other would be the limited development areas, and those are open to new development, new docks being put in, depending on size restrictions and traffic, that kind of thing. I would usually come out and kind of look at what's there and recommend where something might be able to go. We do have some shoreline that is owned by the Corps of Engineers that is managed by local government in Buffalo City. Their shoreline is managed by them, and then Bryce Prairie on Lake Alaska as well. Like I said, we have docks, boathouses, all sorts of structures. We have over 200 miles of boundary, and we do regular inspections for the conditions of the signage, any encroachments, so things that are on government property that shouldn't be on government property, and then trespasses as well, unauthorized mowing, landscaping, that kind of stuff. We want to make sure that that's all kept in check, and then we do formal surveys as needed. For wildlife habitat management, this is where our foresters really come in. I'm the only ranger in my office. We have 5 full-time foresters. So the foresters do tree planting, invasive species control, prairie and woodland management. So there's over 23,000 acres of USAID's-owned land that is classified as wildlife management in our district. The focus is on the land, not the aquatic habitat. Aquatic habitat is multi-jurisdictional, so it has to go through a bunch of different agencies. They primarily will do floodplain forest management, but are also getting more into oak forest and wet meadow and prairies, especially prairie restoration is kind of a newer thing for us. It's where we're getting into the prescribed berms, bringing back the natural prairie that was supposed to be here. And all those restoration efforts support both game and non-game wildlife.
My name is Daniel Foshing. As you can see here, I'm the primary Mississippi River regulator. That's a mouthful, I know. But essentially my job is to observe the precipitation, the rain, and to direct all of our 13 locks and dams in a way that maintains the 9-foot navigable channel. In other words, I try to keep the water level as steady as possible to maintain our navigation, as well as keep the shorelines in shape. And I'm here today to explain in as broad terms and as simple terms as possible how the locks and dams work together to achieve that goal. So, I'm going to begin with the general concept here. First thing is that a lock and dam is different than a reservoir. There are, just like all kinds of things, different wrenches, different cars, there are different kinds of dams. So, a lot of people, we get this question a lot. Why don't we, store water upstream and let it go to, cut down the low ends, and vice versa. So this is a general explanation of why that is. I have 2 buckets here, a blue one and a white one. So hypothetically, once the image comes back, imagine we are to fill up both of the buckets to the brim. Now, the blue bucket, since you can't see it, I'll remind you, has a smaller hole in it. If we were to fill both the buckets up to the brim and let them drain, which bucket do you think would drain first? The white one, thank you, yes. And vice versa, if we were to begin to fill the buckets with, say, the same size hose, which bucket would fill up and overtop first? The blue bucket. Yes. So the same concept is true with this and as the difference between a lock and dam and a reservoir. The bucket on the left, the white bucket, represents a lock and dam. And the blue bucket represents a typical reservoir that you might think of. The big difference is the ratio of water coming in and out of a pool or the bucket and the size of the bucket itself. So if we were to make a diagram here, this is obviously not to scale, but the idea is true. I did the math on this. So Lock and Dam 2 has a pool of about 106K acre-feet. That's a volume measurement. Now, if we were to, at average flows, about 13,000, and if we were to just let it go without any inflow, it would take 8 days to drain Lock and Dam 2 pool. Now, if we were to play the same thought experiment for Sandy Lake, a proper reservoir up in northern Minnesota, with average flows with about 60K acre-feet volume, without any inflow, and we were just to open it to average settings of 550 CFS, it would take over 100 days to drain the entire thing. And so you see the concept here. The Lock and Dam is the white bucket with a large hole, and the reservoir is the blue with a small one. There's a big reason for this. I like to think of, using our bucket analogy. The locks and dams essentially have to deal with a hose filling it so large you could think of it as a fire hose. So another way to think about it would be that the bucket on the lock and dam scenario, that we could just remove the bottom, right? And that way the hose could just flow right through the bucket, basically turning it into a tube. Essentially, that's what the locks and dams are designed for. They deal with so much inflow water that if they were to even try to attempt to hold back water during flood, they would destroy themselves. And this is an important concept to remember. We call this setting or this scenario open river. And so if you've been navigating our locks and dams for a long time, you may have seen this going by. This was a picture from a while ago of Lock and Dam 9, I think, in 2019. We had all the gates pulled above the water for quite a long time because we had quite a lot of water to deal with that year. So yeah, anytime that we get big snow melts or rain that happen large enough, the locks and dams literally pull out the bottom of the bucket. And they don't really operate like a reservoir. They don't really operate like a dam anymore. At that point, I actually like to think about it as the river is returning to its natural flooding state. We can prove this too because the water level behind the dam and the water level upstream of the dam equalizes. And the river will flood, go up, down, do what it needs to until the flow level is low enough that we can start dropping in the gates and maintain that 9-foot nav channel like we're used to. So just some numbers, since we're here for pools 4, 5, 5A, 6, and 7. Lock and Dam 4 pulls their gates when the flow reaches 89,000 cubic feet per second. Lock and Dam 5 pulls their gates when the water inflow reaches 116 cubic feet per second. 5A pulls their gates when the inflow reaches 57,000 cubic feet per second. Lock 6 pulls their gates when the inflow reaches 76. And Lock 7 pulls their gates when the inflow reaches 89,000 cubic feet per second. You might notice these are all different numbers. I think an easy way to conceptualize this is it's roughly based on how many gates are on the dam. The more gates, the higher the number that it can hold the gates in the water. Lock and Dam 5, for instance, 28 containers, 5 roller gates, takes a lot of water before it has to start pulling gates. Another thing to think about is below Lock and Dam 5A, we actually have spillways on those dams. And so they're able to support a higher level inflow. They're farther down the river, so they have more water coming. But they're able to do that because they have spillways to deal with the excess. So, a reservoir can't do this. In fact, we wouldn't place a reservoir anywhere near a region where it would have to deal with that metaphorical fire hose. So, just keep that in mind when you're looking at the locks and dams and you're thinking about, what can the locks and dams do during a flood? The answer is really not much. In fact, I like to think of locks and dams as a drought control, not a flood control. Spread the word on that, because that's exactly what they're designed for. They're designed to continue navigation efforts even in the worst of droughts. And they have for decades. They're very effective at that. Here we are, we have the famous stairwell of water image. I'm sure many of you have have seen this, if you've been to multiple Army Corps presentations. This has been floating around for a while. I think I found the oldest one possible to share in this presentation, just because it humored me. I think it came from the 50s or something. But the dams are the same. They're in the same spots. They have the same amount of gates they did back then. They function effectively the same. However, what's not really talked about when people show you this image is that, well, first I'll explain it. So if you haven't seen this before, essentially this is roughly a scale image of the Mississippi River, the entire navigable reach, all the way up to Minneapolis, all the way down to Lock and Dam 10, the tailwater there, which is the extent of the St. Paul district, so I cut it off there.
There is that.
Gutberg, Iowa? Yeah. So this is like if you were to take the river, you're to bisect it down the middle and lay it flat on a sheet of paper, just like a fish or something. And you're looking at the river from the side. And so each of those drops here, ooh, got the laser pointer, hold on. Yeah, each of these drops here, here's St. Anthony Falls, biggest natural drop on the Mississippi River. It's kind of special about our district. So it's 50 foot, another 30 or so for lower, another 30 or so for Lock 1. And then we get to more kind of what you guys are used to, 12 feet at Lock 2, 8 feet at Lock 3, about 9 feet at Lock 4, so on and so forth. Get the idea. Yet, what I was saying though is that typically what people don't discuss with this image though is that this is actually a really great representation of the locks and dams from the side during a drought scenario. And during drought, this is when the locks and dams really earn their keep. If the locks and dams were not present during drought periods, there would be sections of the river that you could actually walk across. And therefore navigation would be possible. If you're familiar with some of the history of how, my ancestors got here, for instance, they came down to Iowa, up the Mississippi, but they had to wait for spring to do that, because that was in the 1870s or whatever. So they had to wait until it was flooding to even get up the river. And so that's really the benefit of this lock and dam system. And we hold a minimum elevation in these times. I think the big thing I want to point out here is that the elevation at the dam is flat all the way up to the tailwater of the next dam. It'll maybe vary maybe a couple tenths of a foot if you monitor it, depending which way the wind's blowing. But I would say, if you want to do some rough numbers here, this occurs roughly when the flow at Lock 2 is about 5,000 CFS, maybe the flow at Lock 4 is about 10,000, and then maybe now Lock 10 we're in the 20s, low 20s. That's when you will have this state of river. So, let's imagine we get some rain, and we open the gates, and we get some more rain, we open the gates some more, and eventually this event, that picture that we showed earlier, when we pull out the bottom of the bucket occurs. We pull all the gates on the locks and dams, and this natural slope of the river is resumed. What I mean by natural is that the river slope itself is following the bedrock of the topography of the land. And as you can see here, I kind of drew in this line from the downstream end of the dam, comes up to meet the headwater of the dam. Let's say we get even more rain in this scenario. I'm not sure why this is the wrong image, but I'm just going to move to the next one because it's got it on there. Let's say we get even more rain in this scenario. And this red line would represent the water level going even higher. So after the gates are pulled and the river floods further, the water level will go even higher than the regulation levels that we keep. So you can imagine there's kind of three modes of operation. When we're in flat pool, when we're opening gates, and then when we pull the gates. So that this is why the locks and dams can't help during flood and aren't designed to. The river floods naturally, and the elevation of the river is dictated by the topography of the land itself and the amount of water and rain in the basin. Both factors that we cannot control and are up to Mother Nature.
Sir, you said pull the gates. What does that mean?
Let's go back up to the image. We literally pull the gates above the water.
So it is physically, instead of a partial window, it's opened all the ways.
Oh yeah,
Put it down.
oh yeah, yep. In fact, do not drive under the gates, that's dangerous.
I would not.
Okay, thank you. All right. So I'm kind of pointing this out here. If we zoom in on that extra flooding river, so the gates have been pulled for a while, and we got even more water, and the water level rose even further. This is what I want to point out. Where you are, this is supposed to represent Pool 4, so Lake Pepin. I want you guys to start to learn what river mile you're on, because how close you are to the downstream controlling dam is going to influence the amount of river fluctuation that you'll experience. If you're at the tail end of Lock Dam 4, for instance, let me get my guy here. So if you're at the tail end of Lock Dam 4, for instance, you would notice by the time the gates are pulled from, let's say, the difference between a drought, so flat pool, all the way until we pull the gates, you'll notice a river fluctuation of 7 feet. Whereas if you are directly upstream of Lock Dam 4 for that same period, you'll actually notice the river come down 1/2 of a foot. That is what the dams are doing. However, once that tailwater, like we said, comes up and meets the head, we pull the gates, and the river will flood further. So, for instance, last big flood I have here marked as 2023. It's about number 4 on record. It's a good one. Good example. At Lock Dam 4, that tailwater actually fluctuated 12.4 feet. So that's an additional almost 5.5 feet that you would see on top of after we pulled the gates. So that's kind of the concept I want to discuss with you guys today.
Basically, what you're saying that at the 4, on that dam, how close, if you're right at the head of it, you're at 12, but what if you're right behind the head of it, you know?
You mean, so after that 12 feet fluctuation, both sides of the dam have equalized at that point, so there's no head on the dam.
I'm just saying, you had 12 feet of rise, how much rise did you see on the low side of your red, where your red's meeting your blue there?
As compared to the drought, so that black line all the way to the red, that's a 12-foot difference. That's what I'm talking about.
On the other side of that,
So right here,
yes.
they would have seen the difference between that 7, so that'd be the 5.5 feet.
Sure.
Yep. Yeah, good question. So that's what I mean, right? If you're on one side of the dam, you're gonna need some long dock poles, essentially, versus if you're on the upper end of the dam, you may not need as high of dock poles, right? This has huge implications, guys. We get this question all the time. You know, well, how come if I'm on this part of the river, you know, my neighbor downstream, he doesn't need as long of a dock, right? There's all kinds of stuff that people are missing when they can't see the whole pool. And so that's what I'm here to do today with you guys. I've actually brought, well, this is the breakdown. I'll explain in a second. So this is the breakdown of those kind of 3 modes of operations. Remember, all the dams, this is not the same as the Weather Service stuff, okay? This is different. This is about how the dams are functioning and at what flows they function like that. So this is when they're in roughly flat pool, each of the flows. You can see Lock 4, that I mentioned, about 20,000 or so. Lock 5, about 30,000. 5, 8, 25, 27. I think you've seen a theme here. So around 20 to 30,000 for this meeting's stretch. And then in between these flows from 20 to that 89 point right before we pull the gates, that's when we're drying that pool down slowly at Lock 4. Same thing on lot 5, 30 to 16, 116, we're drawing that pool down as the flow goes from 30 to 116. Same thing at 5A, 6, 7. 7 actually doesn't draw down. Kind of fun fact about 7. It just has to do with the positioning of it. If you want, I can explain that quickly. Do my best here. Why does the 7 draw down? If you notice, this part of the river is very steep compared to other parts of the river. If you've ever been on like a ship or something and you have a stairwell, right, that has to get up a quick incline, you have thinner steps. It's the same concept, just over several, 10 miles. So lot 7 doesn't have a drawdown because of the length of the pool. Lake Onalaska has all kinds of interesting implications. We've got the Onalaska Spillway. We've got the outdraft that we're working on. But that is not why the Loch Ness 7 has that. It's a good question though. So, as you can see here, I have defined that these are all the flows that the gates are pulled, right? And then this is the elevation change from about this number to this number that you would experience. Like I was saying a little bit ago though, I actually have, I brought today my hydraulic model. This is the core water management system model. It's pretty fancy. I ran 3 scenarios for all of the locks and dams on the 250 mile plus navigable reach. The reason I did that is because it's, you guys can get on to the Weather Service, you can get on to our website, and you can see the elevations. But what I wanted to provide for you guys, if you would like to, is how to, where's your dock specifically? With my model, I can show you, broken down by river mile, almost tenths of river miles, what's that fluctuation that we're talking about? And so I'm just going to offer that to you guys. I can't plug it in here because this system is kind of antiquated. But I've got my computer right here. I'm going to sit right in front of the stage here. And if you want to come up and chat with me and know about specifically where your dock's located and how much fluctuation you might experience, that's what I want to answer. It's all modeled, but it is based on observed on within, should be about a ½ foot accuracy. So make sure to keep some slack in your lines or in your dock holes. But I'm hoping I can answer some of your questions more directly since we only have a handful of people here. So yeah, go ahead, man.
I don't know if this falls underneath your realm or someone else's. In layman's terms, can you explain after that project at the head of Lake Pepin was done and the Lakota Bay project is being done or will be done, how did that impact navigation and how does that impact other things in that area as it has to do not just with the flow of the channel but also with the pools nearby? They were talking about boats were bottoming out, and then also there were supposed to be environmental benefits, and the marina was supposed to get reconnected in Bay City. Can you talk a little bit to that?
I wish I knew more specifically on that project. Does anyone else want to add to that? I will say though that all of that is done our best due diligence with the most cutting edge models that we have in our budget. We observe water flows and water elevation changes, and yeah.
I'm actually the specific project manager for the Upper Pool 4 and Island 4 projects. Whenever we go through one of these habitat restoration projects, although it also is a beneficial use project, the priority goal of it was to help enhance habitat in that area. Whenever we start one of these projects, one of the primary things we have to check before we're we're ever able to enter construction is we cannot impact the FEMA floodplain models on these projects. So when we build an island, if you think about it, it's similar to if you stick your hand out a window whenever you're driving down the road. If you keep your hand level, you're not blocking things. It's similar whenever we build an island. If you turn your hand sideways, it wants to grab it. It does the same thing with water whenever it's flowing through a channel. So when we build these islands, we try to design them in ways that they don't impact the flow of that water, and we're legally not allowed to. So from that regard, we shouldn't be impacting the water levels in the upper pool 4 area at all. For navigation purposes, through the Wisconsin Channel, that'll remain open. Catherine's Cut, like I said, should be 6 to 7 feet deep at the completion of this project. There will be a little bit of a rock structure helping block sediment from further intruding and refilling in that channel into Bay City. But boats should be able to go back to being able to access Bay City without having to loop all the way downstream to get back around. Right now, there's a big wall of sediment in the way. Like I said, that's going to be dredged and used to help build the islands over the next year or two. And then once those islands are completed, that little rock weir is put in to help to deflect the sediment. We shouldn't impact the flows or anything else into the access to the Bay City, and definitely not around the main channel.
How long do you think that effort will last before the problem?
How long